really excited to be joined today by three plaintiffs in the Gilby-Whitford case. We have Bill Whitford, a lifelong Wisconsinite and our gerrymandering map explaining guru. We have Helen Harris, a longtime principal in Milwaukee's public schools with a continuing passion for excellence in education. And we have Warren Brown, a former school teacher and school board member who has been elected and served both as Milwaukee alderperson and even then as Wisconsin State Senator from Milwaukee. So I'm really excited. I think first we will have Bill walk us through what exactly happened in the redistricting in 2010.
Thank you, Claire. Dan Folkman has produced a series of maps that will help me explain how the gerrymander, what it looks like, how it is drawn, and we can talk later about what effects it had. So Dan, can you put up your first slide? Okay, this is a statewide map of districts. You can see there's two maps. One's labeled 2008, the other is rated 2016. The blue are districts that the Democrats captured. And you can see quite a difference between 2008 and 2016. And all that's due pretty much to the gerrymander. In fact, the current map is very stable, and the 2016 results and the 2018 results are exactly identical with one exception. So districts don't change hands much. And then look at the much less blue on the right than on the left there. Now the question becomes, how did they manage to do that without shipping a whole lot of Democrats out of Wisconsin and importing a lot of Republicans, which didn't happen. So can we move to map 2? Now this map focuses on the area around Milwaukee. Again, it shows the old map that's on the left and the new map that's on the right. The light blue line that runs from right to left and then down shows the boundaries of Milwaukee County. I want to make a couple observations about looking at these two maps. First of all, the blue are the seats that the Democrats won in those elections. There's a lot less Democratic seats. In 2010, there were 15 blue seats. In 2012, there were 11 Democratic seats won by the Democrats. That's a change of 4, almost all due to the gerrymander. In fact, 2012 was a better Democratic year than 2010, but they won a lot less seats, as you can see. The second point I would make is look at the shape of the districts. The districts in the map on the left, the old districts, well, they're not squares, but they're much more square-like. Compactness is a term we use. If you look at the districts on the right, there's a whole series of Republican districts that are elongated. Particularly there on the west side, that's what we're going to focus on, but also on the north side. So I think the next map, Dan, focuses particularly on those west side maps, so we can talk about how gerrymandering is done. There we are, and I hope you can read the district numbers. But I want to focus on those 5 maps on the west side of Milwaukee and into Waukesha County that go basically from east to west. The strategy here, and it's called cracking, is basically to move into Milwaukee County and take a bunch of Democratic votes and then move the district west into highly Republican areas of Waukesha County so that there's far enough so there's enough Republican votes to make that seat safely Republican. The net effect is to basically negate or waste, we say, the vote of the Democratic votes in the west side of Milwaukee. We have a couple of my fellow plaintiffs here. Warren Brown, he's from District 13, which is in the middle of those. And Helen Harris, she's from District 22, the northernmost of those 5 counties. They both live in Milwaukee County, but they both live in districts which is dominated from votes Waukesha County. So that's called cracking. And to make that possible, it's necessary to take other Democratic votes and make them in highly packed districts, which are the dark blue districts to the east. I mean, under the previous map, if we looked at it, a lot of those districts on dark blue districts moved up into the western parts of Dane County, of Milwaukee County there, and they were more competitive. So that's another effect of gerrymandering, is to get rid of competitive seats. These districts have not changed political color. The party of the winning assembly person in any of the districts on that map, save one, and that's number 13. In 2018, after the incumbent Republican assemblyman moved on, so there was no incumbent in the district, a very good Democrat, Robin Vining, was able to eke out a win by, I think, about 130 votes. And that was a real upset because the seat was designed to be Republican and has been Republican, and she will be targeted in the 2020 election. She's a very good assembly person, and I hope she can hold it. But other than that, none of those seats changed hands. So that's another feature of gerrymandering. There are very few competitive districts. I think that's enough on the maps.
Sure. Thank you so much for that explanation. I really see the visual difference between the before in the 2008 and the after, either in the 2012 or 2016 maps that we were looking at, of just kind of the elongation of those districts, even, you know, outside of Milwaukee. That was really helpful for me to see. But I'm wondering kind of what this means for people at the day-to-day level and in people's lives. And I'm wondering, Helen, if you could walk me through what made you care so much about this issue so as to join on as a plaintiff in the case that went to the Supreme Court.
Well, when I look at those first two maps, it really makes me angry, because it would seem that 90% of the voters are voting in one party, that 90% of Wisconsinites are Republican, when the information indicates that we are pretty well split between Democrats and Republicans in Wisconsin. But because of this artificial manipulation of these districts, Republicans have the vast majority of the power, and it's just not fair. And as a voter, I just feel that to a large extent, I've been disenfranchised. My district was one that was cracked. We had on the Northwest side a strong district where people cared about voting. They got out and voted. They supported the people that were running for office. They cared about the process. But when this happened for the first time, the districts crossed counties. So my district was no longer Milwaukee County, but it was joined with another county and stretched way up from Milwaukee to the Holy Hill area. The immediate effect on me was that I no longer felt a connection to my legislator. Previously, my legislator had lived in the county, in my case, in the city, and even in my neighborhood. That legislator was visible at community meetings, even neighborhood meetings. When we needed to have an update on something, he was there. My new legislator does not live in my county or my city. And I get the feeling that she doesn't really care about my concerns and what's valuable to me. I don't see her in the community. If she comes in, I'm not aware of it. I've tried to make contact to the office, but get very minimal response. So that was my initial reaction. I still feel a disconnect with my legislator. And of course, I don't feel that the things that I feel are important are being addressed. I'm concerned about schools. I'm concerned about healthcare. I'm concerned about voting and enabling people to vote rather than restraining people from voting. So these are some of the reasons why I got involved. as a plaintiff. And it was a wonderful experience, having the opportunity to learn more about gerrymandering and how it really was affecting citizens, having the opportunity to go to Washington and listen to the hearings. And I'm just still hopeful that somehow we will be able to turn this around so that our districts are fairly representing the people in Wisconsin.
Thank you so much. Wow, that's so powerful hearing my new legislator does not live in my county or my city, and I don't know her. Like, that's incredible. Wow. Well, I'd like to hear also from Warren. I know you were a plaintiff as well. Would you care to speak to why you were moved, like Helen and Bill were, to join on as a plaintiff?
Well, I've never been a suburbanite until I moved to Wauwatosa about 10 years ago, obviously representing Milwaukee. And while I was there, I participated in 2 redistricting schemes, one with the city when I was an alderman and one when I was a state senator. And those were kind of primitive times. We took the polling lists and we consulted the legislator and find out they were our best source of who voted and who didn't, and what were their leanings, what did they want. And so we kind of adjusted the districts to a one person, one vote was our guideline. When I moved to Tulsa 10 years ago, my wife and I, we found out that we live in eastern Wauwatosa, which is a district which is fairly well divided between Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberals, and so forth. And so we knew some of the officials who lived in Wauwatosa, not too many, but a few. And then there was a representative a race, and Dennis McBride was part of that. And we had to adjust our campaigning, if you would. The little bit that I did once I turned 80 was hard to go door to door. Impossible now, but it was still possible then, because it was too far away, and that it was the housing and so forth was a whole lot different. So we didn't know, I didn't know who our representative necessarily was when we moved here. We found out the contact that we had with them was superficial at best. I never got an answer to any of the questions that I sent. All I got was kind of a re-election blurb from them, which didn't have any answers. It was just kind of campaign rhetoric. Then I found out that the primary way that the Republicans have gotten rid of their dissidents within the party is the whole primarying thing. They're all afraid of the primary because most of them have taken an oath that if they vote for any tax increase or fee increase, that they will have a primary opponent. And that scares the bejesus out of most office holders. They don't care about the election anymore because that's pretty secure. I might add, that's what it used to be in Milwaukee. If you survived a Democratic primary, you were in. You didn't really have to run in the final. That's what's going on now, I feel, because I knew friends of mine in the state Senate who didn't toe the party line, particularly here in Wauwatosa. They were primaried, they lost their seat, and from that time on, there wasn't any real response to the questions that we had or the issues that we had. And there's little that I can do anymore about the physical part of campaigning, but I am really concerned that, as somebody has said, that the politicians are now choosing their voters. Well, they always did that. They always chose districts at least where they thought they had a better chance or it was contiguous. They may have, or its reputation may have kind of spilled over or something like that. So we have always had a hand as elected officials in what the maps will look like. However, when those maps are drawn through the use of very sophisticated computer analysis and data, there isn't much of a chance. we used to use the polling lists, and those were our major source of voter identification. And of course, that's not a partisan list, but we still use that. Now, the information that a politician has, and I think it's pointed out now with the pandemic, where they can't even get out, and talk to people, probably won't make a whole lot of difference. So the whole question comes down then to what will inspire people to buck the political party that represents them, whether they're Democrat or Republican. Are they meeting the views that they want to have? And that, I think, is my biggest fear, that how do you reach the voters who may be basing their vote on performance rather than on political affiliation?
So I was hearing from you, Warren, that, it's not a blame game of, because, the Republicans did it this time, they're to blame for all of gerrymandering for all of time, that both parties have done this, but that the level of sophistication in data use at these times, and you even said in primitive times, which I thought was interesting, because I wasn't even 18 in 2010, so I've never known, how it felt, or what Helen was talking about, to feel community engagement, that you knew your legislator, that maybe they even walked down your block and you could talk to them. Like, I just have no idea that world that you all say was possible and that existed. So it's nice and sad, both to hear about that. But given that level of sophistication in data use, and that you can really identify exactly the kind of voter you're looking for, and maybe I can turn this question to Bill and ask, I know there's a nonpartisan redistricting bill. Could that help address this kind of sophistication, or what can we do?
Well, the momentum now, or the effort now by reformers, is to basically take redistricting out of the hands of politicians and giving them to some kind of nonpartisan body, and in an effort to get away from these kind of biased districts. As I said, both sides can do it. I say the Democrats haven't done it in Wisconsin for years and years and years. Well, in my lifetime, which is quite a long time, but they have in other states. So the nonpartisan bill was introduced by Governor Evers, and most Democrats now support it. This new Democratic Assemblywoman from Wauwatosa, Warren, you're District 13. Mm-hmm. Robin Vining is the co-sponsor of that district. But the Republicans are so far just deep sixed it. There are no hearings, there's no votes. There has been an effort at the county level to show that there's a lot of public support for this bill. And at the county board of supervisors levels, there's either been resolutions passed in favor of the nonpartisan redistricting bill, or the county board of supervisors has offered actual advisory referendums for votes. And as you can see from this map, every place it's been up, it's passed. 51 of the 72 counties in Wisconsin have now passed it, either as a county board resolution or in an advisory referendum. When it's got up for a referendum, the popular vote in favor of it has been basically 65% and higher, sometimes significantly higher. The white counties haven't considered it. So that's where the momentum is right now, and the Republicans are blocking it in the legislature. We have to figure out some way to get the Republicans there. They're hoping, I think, to try to continue the present gerrymander for another 10 years, come 2021. Yeah.
I think that right now we are at a crisis point. The whole situation with George Floyd, with so many people marching and demonstrating around the state and around the world, and people saying that they want to do something. this would be a way to do something, to embrace this whole concept of fair maps by a nonpartisan group. This would not favor Democrats, it wouldn't favor Republicans, but it would be a way to give some teeth to the sorrow that people are expressing and the marching and all of that. If people want to do something, now is the time to act, because we're never going to make things better in this country until there is more fairness and until everyone's voice can be heard. So I think that we're at a pivotal point where something could be done. And as Kamala Harris said, maybe this is an opportunity to reimagine how we do things in this country. I'm hoping that we can reimagine schooling and reimagine safety. One of the things that was taken away from us in Milwaukee was residency. When it comes to police, I think when police live in our community and when they know the people in the community and the people know them the way it used to be, I think it would be much more productive in trying to establish the kind of safety we want to have in our communities.
And what would you say, Helen, to the folks that absolutely are in agreement, have been marching in the streets, have been saying we cannot return to the status quo because the status quo is killing us? We can only move toward a more resilient, better, different, more caring, more just society. How can they get involved in fair maps to help make it so that one person has one vote?
I think that would be a very good place to start. And I think Bill would know the specifics about it more than I would, but I am all for it because I think it makes sense. It's not giving one party or the other more say in the matter, but having a group of people work it out so that it's fair as you can make it for each party.
If you Google fair maps, you'll come up with a couple of websites that are Wisconsin-based about the Fair Maps organization. It has, I won't try to repeat all the information you can learn from that website. I will say, to relate back to Warren's comments, that one of the aspects of fair maps are to create more districts that are party competitive so that the general election matters. It's not just the primary election. And if we can do that, then I think, just in their self-interest, legislators will begin talking to all their constituents, not just their Republican constituents or, in fact, Democratic district Democratic constituents. One of the worst aspects of this gerrymandering is, as Helen testified, legislators just don't care about the parts of the other party because they don't have any chance of winning their district anyhow.
Yes.
It's good, if I can just jump in for just a minute. It's good to hear from Helen. Again, it's been a long time since we had a conversation, but she's as determined as ever. I'm rather hopeful in the sense that there are two things. Number one, there are a lot of younger people now who seem to have a fire for doing something. That wasn't always the case. They were busy with other things, obviously, in their lives and so forth. But now they seem to be. The second thing, and this is, again, it's an old-fashioned idea, okay? I have found that when I came on the electoral scene in Milwaukee City, the open housing or fair housing was the issue. People thought that everybody was opposed to it and that you took your life in your hands politically if you favored it. Well, many of us did not favor it, and we felt we had an obligation to go out and talk to people, try to answer their objections and educate them, if you will, that this was a fairer way forward and that it was damaging to them to continue with this kind of hyper segregation in housing in Milwaukee So we took on realtors and advertising and things like that. But I'm encouraged that there is a spirit now to try to engage the legislators. But it's going to take that to change their view on what it means to be fair. It isn't fair when you have a guaranteed result in your election. That's anti-democratic and tyrannical and everything else. So maybe we have a chance now to look at the people who are on the streets, but more importantly, the people they're trying to reach, and see if we can reach some kind of a common ground that's reasonable. And I don't think it's ever going to be unpolitical, but perhaps it won't be quite as hyper-political.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I hear you. We can't disentangle access to housing and healthcare and education and good jobs and clean air and clean water from
Right.
racial justice and why we're all in the streets. These are all interconnected. There aren't different types of justice. You know, justice is justice, and they're all interrelated and inextricable. And I think a lot of people understand this. And if we had one voice meant one vote, I think there would be a lot of different changes happening.
If
I
that
see that-
one vote counted, it would be fine. But in
Mhm.
many cases, that's the result of gerrymandering, that certain votes don't count at all.
Mhm.
And that's what we have to be opposed to.
I totally agree. I see we're running out of time, and I just
Okay.
want to thank all of you so much. I learned a lot, and it leaves me feeling a lot more hopeful and ready and committed to change and for justice. So thank you so much.